Hello, and welcome back to Minecraft. This episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different, but also a little bit the same. We made a lot of progress last episode, and we're getting really close to being done with the starter area, but we have a few things that need to get finished before we can officially call it quits over here. I think to get this episode started, we're going to start in the original area that we began, which is our starter base. We're going to make some changes to make this area a little bit better. I think the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a little bit of color to some of these areas. I'm thinking just like this to kind of tell me which layer that I'm on, because I often get kind of lost in here and have to double check each side. And knowing exactly where I'm at while I'm in the mine area would be really useful. So I'm going to start adding some colors on the way down just so that I can quickly at a glance know exactly where I'm at. I think this is really going to help. Seeing this green here tells me how far I am down, and as I continue up, I know how close to the surface I am now. I think that'll be a really good overall change. The next change is going to be a pretty subtle one, but one that's needed. When I originally made this tree farm, I wanted each one of these little coves to be slightly different, and that meant I raised this one. A consequence of that is that the lighting up here is not hanging low enough to make this center bamboo grow. And at the time, I didn't realize that was what was happening, so I added glowstone in just so that it would continue to grow. But I don't really like the way that that looks. So now that I've figured out exactly how to fix it, I'm going to go ahead and change it. All right, there we go. That looks much better now. That glowstone just really didn't add anything to the room. Next up is the enchanting room. We made this pretty early on, and as a result, I didn't have a lot of blocks when we made it. And also, I kind of thought I was going to end up putting the brewing area here, but that's a little bit further down. So I think this room needs a little bit of an adjustment. I want to add some candles and some amethyst and maybe a few other blocks. We'll see. All right, I think that's looking a little bit more magical. We got tons more candles in here. We got some amethyst. I also changed this area over here so that it looked less like a potion area and just added some extra amethyst over here and their different growth cycles. Now I think this is looking a lot more like what I intended it to look like when I made it. Next, I was thinking that this floor could use a little bit more depth. I forgot that you can layer these and make like little hills and stuff in here. So I think I'm going to do that so that this area doesn't look as bland. I think that added just the right amount of depth in here. Looks a lot more pleasing. A few episodes ago, we made this bee farm, and I said that I wanted to fill all of these slots up with hives, and I never got around to doing it. Slowly over the episodes, I have been gathering hives, and I went out and got the rest of them today. Some of these, well, most of these, have bees already in them. One of them does not, but we can always repopulate any that we need. And while I was out trying to gather those today, I came across something interesting, a underwater ruins, and I had some crazy luck. As you can see, I found 2 sniffer eggs in one underwater ruin. That's an insane amount of luck. So I got those, I got a couple of new sherds, I got a nautilus shell, and just some emeralds, which we'll probably need later. But that's crazy. I've never had a sniffer before, and to find 2 of them was outrageous. I'm so glad that I was recording because I almost didn't. And the only reason I decided to was just in case I died. So In the future, we'll have to make some kind of area for sniffers, and we're being overwhelmed by bees currently. But let me go ahead and add these hives in here so that way we can get plenty of honey and honeycomb whenever we need it from this point forward. Okay, at this point, this is probably overkill for my needs, but it looks pretty cool. And yes, I do realize I could have went and got or made hives, made the like beehives, the one that you can actually craft, and place those in here. But I wanted to get the actual hives because I think they look cooler. And then this area feels a little bit more special to me because I actually went out and gathered everything. I'm quite happy with that. But now we're going to be getting so many more materials in here, and we've got so many more bee friends. For now, I'm going to be adding these extra bits into our valuables chest. We got a couple of the Snort pottery sherds and the Angler pottery sherds. And I'm going to leave the sniffer eggs in here too, I think, just so that I know where they're at, because they are very valuable and they should definitely be in the valuables chest. The final part of our mining area is the entrance, and we made this episode 1 and it's pretty much stayed the same. I had a bunch of storage up here. This was my original storage room, and a couple of furnaces and blast furnaces and stuff like that. I also have my rudimentary compost farm and my bed, and we have this book over here that kind of has all of our deaths listed in it. We've had 3 deaths so far, and I kept it up here so that we could add to it whenever we do die, so that we can kind of learn from our mistakes. But this area doesn't get used anymore. In fact, all of these chests are empty now. The only thing that stays up here is the book and quill that I use to kind of mark off what we're doing as we go along. But for the most part, this area just doesn't get used anymore. And so I'm mostly thinking maybe I should change this area up so that it's either more useful or it just looks more aesthetically pleasing. Because right now it's kind of a little bit funky in here and everything's just shoved up against the walls and there's nothing really going on here. I think for starters, it might help if I kind of gut the place and pull everything out and start from scratch. Okay, now it's all empty. I think the first thing that I want to start with is this area right here. I originally put all of these trapdoors in so that I could close it when I wasn't going down there, but I probably haven't closed it since episode 1. It's just been open the entire time. And as a result, I usually end up just kind of falling into it, which isn't really a big deal because it's not that deep. But I kind of think that maybe we could do something for a change here. I'm wondering if maybe we could flip these and put them almost as a rail instead and see what that looks like. You know what? I think I like that a little bit better. I think it kind of adds something to the middle of the room a little bit more. And I think that ends up kind of feeling a little better. I can't just fall in. I could always just jump in if I really needed to. But I think that conveys better what I originally wanted this to be, and without like the tedium of always having to close it, because there's really no reason for me to close it. I think the next thing is to re-add some of our workstations back over here, but more specifically the ones that I actually use, because I wasn't really using any of these furnaces up here because I have a furnace room down there. So I think we might just put the ones in here that are absolutely necessary. That's a lot more compacted and a lot more things that I'm going to find more useful up here. I use the composter quite a lot, especially when clearing out leaf litter in the forest area. I stuff it all in here, and so having it just right when I come in the door, I think will be a lot more useful. The only thing that I do sometimes use up here is probably like I would use the single furnace to cook some food. So I figured why not just go ahead and add a smoker up here so that I can cook my food up here with that. I know that a smoker isn't absolutely necessary for that, but it's something a little bit different. And then the other two things are this and this. Sometimes I will pop back in here if I've forgotten to cut something down or if I need to craft something and I don't have a table on me. So I think those are also very useful. Next up is kind of the bed situation. I think I want a double bed here because I always felt like that single bed looked really funky. And that kind of gives us a better place to put our lectern, I think. We could probably put it right there next to the bed. Uh-oh, which one of these is the one? This is the right one. Let's put that on there. So now we have that going on. And we can still technically put these at the foot of the bed as like the footboard. You know what, actually? I don't really like that. I think it wouldn't look too bad if I had like some sort of a headboard, but I do want a walk space here. So I don't think that's going to be necessary anymore. What I can do, however, is add this here and put our book and quill that I actually use here. So we'll have all of this kind of tucked in a little bit better. And of course, we can decorate this. And I think this little guy will be the decoration. I really like the way the little warp fungus looks. Next, I'm thinking some kind of shelf over here because I do still use some of those chests that were here as like a drop box. If I'm feeling too lazy to immediately go down and put them away, I'll kind of store a bunch of junk here. And then when I'm done recording, I'll bring it all down all at once. So let's make something that I can kind of use for that same purpose. I think that will do. I went ahead and I removed the little tiny support things in the corners because they were kind of looking real funky and attaching to everything that I placed. So I went ahead and removed those. I don't think they're necessary. Now I think our functionality for this space is added. So now it's about decorating and adding things to make this look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. I think I've got it all set up now. So a lot has kind of changed since the beginning. We've got like our stations, we've got some decorations, we've got our lectern. I moved it from there to over here. It just looked a little bit better and more balanced over here. I've also put a bunch of book and quills in here just in case we need them. In here, we have our book and quill that I use to keep track of stuff. And in here, we've got our music disc, and I've got a jukebox over here. So if I ever want to listen to music while I'm working or I'm putting away my stuff, then I can do that as well. Of course, over here, we've got some more decorations. I've got one of the eye blossoms here, and I think it's really cool. I think it opens at night because I have seen it open at some point, but maybe I'm just imagining that. Maybe it was open when I put it in, and maybe it just closed after that. I'm not sure. I'll have to pay better attention. I added one of the sherds that we got over here, just the one in the front, because that's the side you're going to see the most. And of course, we've got our little drop chests in case I'm being too lazy to bring stuff down right away. I think the last detail that I have was that I added these little curtains here. They kind of help block out just a little bit of the light, and they also add like a little bit of color in here. I am by no means an expert with the loom, so this will kind of be my first attempt at using the loom in this playthrough, and we'll see maybe later on if I get better at using it. This is just a dark gray banner with cyan at the bottom and then a gradient from black down. So nothing particularly special, but it's something and it's a start at trying something new. I think this area is definitely looking a lot better, a lot more livable, and a lot more functional. It really needed the upgrade from what it was, I think. When I first made it, obviously, we had very limited supplies at the beginning, so I couldn't have made it something like this before, but I'm happy with what it's turned out to be. I think that concludes what we need to do inside, so let's head on out. There's a few very small changes that I want to make over to our nether portal island, so let's head over. The first change is right here. For some reason, I never added stairs. I'm not quite sure why I did that, but let's get those added in so that I don't have to jump up to get into the portal. That's kind of silly. The second thing is that I do want to add a little bit of light over here, but I do kind of want it to be hidden. So I'm going to kind of recess it down. This just kind of prevents stuff from spawning here because I have had a few things spawn here and like shoot at me when I'm running over here trying to do the mob farm at night. So I think that's just a subtle little thing that will help in the future. And that's pretty much it for this little island over here. I don't think anything else really needs any big changes. This is another kind of little subtle one, but this pile of stone right here, it originally looked really nice, but then I added a stone wall right behind it, and now it blends in with that stone wall and it doesn't look very good. So I'm going to change it to deep slate. Oh, yeah, that's got much better contrast now. Definitely sticks out from the wall behind it. Think that's looking much better. While the last thing that we did was pretty subtle, I think the next thing might not be as subtle. I'm really not happy and haven't kind of been happy with the layout of these farms. I don't really like the look of the pumpkin and melon farm in general, so I'm thinking I might move that down underneath in our mine. The same can be said for the cactus farm. It just doesn't really fit in here, so I think I'm going to move both of those. I'm also not happy with this centerpiece. I think that the sugarcane looks a little strange here in the middle like this, so I'm considering moving this maybe over to there. As for that one over there, I think that might be beetroot, and I might split this evenly between carrots and potatoes in here so that these farms look just a little bit better and you can see a little bit more of the ruins. Because right now, a lot of it just ends up getting covered by sugarcane as soon as it grows. And to be quite honest, I don't need this much sugarcane. So let's get started on that. All three farms have now been cleared, and I think the next step is to figure out what I want to do with each of these areas. And I've been considering lowering them in a block rather than just having them be a flat path. And I think I'm going to do that by putting maybe an outline of slabs all the way around. That way we can kind of step into these farms because, especially with this small one over here, it ends up looking kind of funky all one layer like that. So I think it might be more interesting if it kind of dug down and went in. We'll start with the small one first to see if we like it though. I think that's a subtle little change, but I like it. I think it's going to add a little bit more dimension to this area. I've went ahead and I've added the water sources underneath these planks as well, just so that we can use the whole field for the beetroot farm instead of having like a bunch of hidden blocks or whatever for this one since it's so small. Okay, so here is the problem that I'm coming up with is I can see all these little blocks underneath here. So I think I'm going to need to replace those with more of this block so that way you can't really see it. Okay, now we're talking. That looks much better. Let's go ahead and add our beetroot. Now the beetroot won't overpower the ruin structure. It'll just be kind of in addition to it. I'd now like to do the same over here to what was the pumpkin and melon farm. I'm going to go ahead and change this out so that this can be for the sugarcane. I definitely think having the sugarcane lowered down is really going to help, because this one's kind of an overpowering one. The other good thing is that this one isn't super open like the other ones, so the sugarcane will be a lot more subtle since it's kind of more hidden. I know I could put the sugarcane underground as well, but I do kind of like the look of this farm, even though it is kind of strange. But for now, I think this will look a lot better, having it further down as well as mostly shielded, because this is quite a full set of ruins instead of being wide open. It's quite covered. So I think this one will do much better over here. Last but not least, of course, is this really big one. This one is going to be half carrot, half potato, I think, because those are the ones that we'll probably end up needing for trading to farmer villagers and stuff later. Now this one's going to take quite a bit more work, so let me get to it. This is already looking much better. I went ahead and did something a little bit different for the outer edge here. This is probably going to be the farm that I am in the most, that I'm gathering stuff from, like I said, for villager trades. So I kind of made this have a little bit more of a border on it, just so that I'm less likely to smash crops when I come on in. And it also kind of makes this farm a little less ridiculously huge, because originally when I made this, it was just way too big. And I didn't realize until after it was already made that this was kind of an excessively large farm. Let me get started filling it on up. So I kind of decided to fill everything in quarters just so it's a little bit of variety rather than half and half. I think that's pretty cool. Overall, though, I think this looks much better than the monstrosity that was here with the sugarcane in the middle. The sugarcane covered a lot of the area, and it just didn't look as good as I had hoped it would in the beginning. Now that we're done fixing up the farms over there, I think it's time to turn our attention to this area here. And I need to remove this temporary area that was here for the cows, and we're going to replace it with something completely different. Man, this area looks a little bit strange without that there, but we're going to add something a little bit more useful here. If you guys don't remember, we've found some dogs, and I have them over here, up here by the wheat field. We've got 4 of the different types of dogs so far, and right now they're just sitting here on this hill, and this isn't really a great place for them. So I'm thinking I want to make a ruins to kind of match the farm areas, but on land instead of in the water this time, that these little guys can actually stay in and be sheltered in. Let's see if I can fit my idea in this tiny little area. So here's kind of the idea that I want to go for. It's not going to be a complete circle. It's just going to be a partial circle. And I'm going to make it kind of short, I think. I don't want it to be super tall. And it's going to have some kind of a flooring in it so that they're sheltered rather than like these where they're very open. So it's going to be a little bit different than these ones. I think I'm going to have a little bit of an actual floor in here and then a little bit of like a dirt area in here. Maybe even an area for little tiny beds for them or something like that. I think that'd be cute as well. Let me start building that up. I think this is the official shape that I'm going to start with, and it's probably going to change a little bit as I go because I still need to add some kind of a roof in and some kind of a flooring in, but I think this is a really good start. Now that's definitely looking more like a little place for puppies. We've got a roof on it now and some light going on. We got the ground done. We got some little bed spaces for them in here. I added a little bit more detail up there with some more windows and stuff like that. I think this matches the style of our ruins over here. Let's get started over here by taming this dog. We never got this one tamed. Oh, and it only took 1. That's kind of crazy. Let's get all these little guys over there. Seems like a really good fit. Let's give them a little bit more personality though. There, now they've at least got different colored collars. For now, that'll have to do. I don't have quite enough name tags to name them all right now, but eventually I will name them. Hopefully I'll have the remainder of the wolf variants as well, and then we can name all of them at once. I know I'm certainly jumping around in this episode, but in the sake of finishing everything off, we're going to be doing that. And I think this area is one that is really lacking. I want to add some more detail in some of these areas and add a little bit of extra stuff in here. First off, I think I want to add some grass out here for these guys. Just a little bit in each pen. Nothing too crazy. I think that just adds a little bit of extra detail out here so it's not so boring. I'm going to keep the inside of their pen pretty clear. And I did spend some time looking at the insides of stables as well, and most of them are pretty empty aside from things like the harnesses and the saddles and stuff like that, or harnesses, bridles, I should say, and the saddles and stuff like that. But we can't really add stuff like that quite yet to the walls. It does look like in a future update they're going to be adding shelves, so I might be able to add some shelves in here later and add like the armor and leads and stuff like that. I might be able to add some of that up on the wall to make it look a little bit more decorated then. But for now, the only other thing that I could really think of to add in here was a composter. because I usually see like a lot of like upkeep type stuff. So barrels, trash cans, stuff like that. So I think adding that in here would be a pretty decent idea. And I think I'm going to add it here. And I think I might want to move this as well, so that maybe it's a little bit more symmetrical here, because it looked kind of crowded over there. So we'll keep a crafting bench in here because this does kind of fit the theme in here. And we'll have our barrels for all of our stuff in here. Out back of the stables here, where our gas comes out, I was also realizing that this isn't very much of a runway. So I think I want to extend this out a little bit with kind of like a little runway slash dock type thing, so that it's easier to get him in here a little bit more smoothly. So in addition to adding this dock, I also cut down one of the trees right here, so that way we have a little bit of a clearer landing. I think this is looking a lot better, and this will make it a lot easier for me to redirect the ghast into their little area. Last up over here by the stables is this little area out front. When we originally built the stables, I left this area and I said that I had an idea, but I just didn't have the time to execute it. Now is the time to do that thing. I'm thinking I'm going to add a little bit of a pond right here. I think that would look really cute. And maybe I could use a lead or two to kind of keep a frog in the area, or perhaps an axolotl. I haven't found an axolotl yet, but in the future we could always put one in. Let me get to building a pond. I think this is looking like a pretty good shape for a pond. I have realized this is a thin little gap right here, so I might want to reinforce this side with like a little bit of stone so it makes sense that it wouldn't break this area and like push out and wash away all our crops and stuff. And then maybe on the other side, I can leave it a little bit more grassy and everything like that, because that side is not in danger of like breaking the landscape, basically. This is kind of what I'm thinking for depth of this pond. I don't want it to be super deep down. I will probably turn this into mud, as I tend to do, and then add a few more details. And of course, that rock wall, we got to do that. Otherwise, like I said, it looks like it would collapse over there. So here is our pond without any water in it yet. I went ahead and made a darker rock formation because we have a couple of these little tiny stone formations nearby, and I didn't want it to blend in too much. I know it kind of blends in a little bit with the mud, but once we add water, it'll kind of separate it a little. I need to figure out what kind of decorations I'm going to want to add to the top of the water. I'm thinking maybe a few lily pads and a few drip leaf. But I think this is close to done. Let me start getting it filled in. Now that it's filled, it's time to decorate. I got some lichen just to add a little bit of light in here. And then some grass. I also brought a little bit of kelp. I know that you wouldn't really see kelp in here, but I think it'll add a little bit of a different texture in there, which I think is good. And of course, we have some lily pads and some drip leaf. After some thought, I think I might wait to find axolotls to put one in here, because I think the frogs, even if I try to lead them, they might break off the leads. I'm not sure if the updates to the leads will keep them in place a little better or not. If anybody knows, feel free to let me know in the comments, of course. But for now, I think it's going to be kind of empty. I might grab a fish or two and throw it in here, but it might remain kind of empty until I can get some axolotls. We finished up the stables. Let's give some love to the barn. When we finish this off, I didn't add any of the details, and it looks quite plain in here, so it's time to remedy that. I think downstairs is all done. I mostly decorated the insides of these areas for the animals, and I added a little bit of leaf litter in here so it wasn't so vibrant of a contrast. Added the water and some hay. I know that like the pigs don't eat hay or whatever, but I put it in here just to kind of symbolize that they have food. And of course, I added some more details to their pen so that it's not so boring out here. The cows got some very similar treatment over here with a lot more detail in their pen, so it's not just a flat ground. And of course, I gave them a little feeding area too. Chicken pen is slightly different in here. I added a lot more of the hay here for them because they would kind of like roost in here. And I know I could make like a little roosting area, but I figured the hay was pretty good for that. This main area I'm going to be leaving pretty open so that I can kind of move and transport animals whenever I need to. And I kind of don't want stuff in my way when I need to do that. And up here is where we're going to be doing all of the storage and stuff like that. I think my plan for up here is not just the storage, but also to make some kind of a little like bedroom for, maybe a stable hand or something like that, just so that they could be close to the animals. All right, I think we have this loft area complete. So we've got some extra hay supplies over here, and then we've got some barrels over here for each of the animals. So for the chickens, we're going to collect things like their raw meat, their eggs. We'll have feathers in here. Also got some wheat seeds for breeding them. The cows, I'm going to have their wheat in here, and then eventually I'll have some beef and some leather. And I also have some buckets in here in case I need milk. Lastly, we have the pigs, so we've got carrots and the pork chops. And I also left some saddles in here in case I ever want to use one of the pigs as a mount. So that's this side over here with all of our utility going on. And then behind us, we have like this little space for some kind of a stable hand. We have a little bedroom area with a little table and a potted plant and stuff like that, a cute little painting. And then we also have like a kitchen area because they would obviously need to be able to take care of themselves. We've got like this smoker in here, the brewing stand. I'm not exactly sure what that would represent, but it kind of looks like it belongs in a kitchen. I made a cake just for decoration. And then we've also got like our fake little fridge back here. And in here we've got a trash can so we can put some stuff in here. I left some carpet in here. I'll take that out. But yeah, we got like this little area for stable hands now. I think that's pretty good. This will be a good area for me to run into to get a quick sleep. Looks like it's about time to now, if I'm ever over in this area and I don't have a bed on me. And I think with that area up there done, we are finally done with the barn and getting this looking nice and proper over here. I think there's one more project left before I consider my area finally complete over here, and that's this spot right here. A long time ago, I talked about putting a custom tree here, and I had a poor attempt at a custom tree over here. This one's pretty small, and it was quite difficult, so I don't think it came out the best. But I think maybe making a larger tree over here, maybe I'll have a little bit more success with a custom tree. I'm hoping this one will end up about the size of one of these types of trees. So not enormous, but a lot larger than that little tiny dinky one that I attempted over there. Let me give it a try. I think I have the trunk ready and the branches. This is one of those things I think is going to look better once I add the leaves, because right now it looks a little bit silly. I did want this branch to be a bit longer because I kind of wanted it to hang a little bit more over towards the water. Overall, I'm not quite sure what I think of it just yet. I think once I add the leaves, I'll have a better opinion on whether or not it looks good. While I don't think this tree is perfect, I do think it's a lot better than the previous tree that I built. I used my gas beetle to help with building this because placing all the leaves was kind of a pain in the butt, but it didn't come out too bad, I don't think. Definitely lots of room for improvement in the future, but that's okay. That's kind of what this series is about me learning how to do things and trying things for the first time. I also added a little picnic blanket underneath here with some cups full of who knows what and some candles for when it's nighttime. And I added a few lanterns just to give the area a little bit more light. As you can see, the firefly bushes are putting off little particles and stuff. I think that looks really nice. I think the very last thing I need to do is add a little bit more of stuff like this in the area so that it fits in a little better, because right now it's a little bit plain. But other than that, I think this is done. So let me go ahead and put Beetle back in the stable, and then we'll get ready for a tour of everything that we've done in the starter area. Let's give this place a tour. Most of this stuff is going to be stuff that has already been featured in this series, but some of this stuff is going to be stuff that I did off camera during times when I wasn't feeling well, or just because I figured it wouldn't fit into an episode. We're going to start with our starter base. This is the very first thing that we built in this series. It's kind of just a box, but I'm quite happy with it. And today, of course, we updated it and we made the inside a little bit more cozy and looking a lot more lived in. I definitely think the change from what it was into what it is now kind of shows a little bit of the improvement that I've made over the course of this series. And of course, the point of this whole building was to make it an entrance into the mines. I know I don't show a lot of it on camera, but mining is my favorite part of Minecraft. I really just love being way down in the depths and hunting for ores. I find it very fun. The first thing we've got down here is, of course, our storage area, which we had to extend recently because I was running out of space. We still have some extra areas that are completely empty, so if we need more room, we can always expand. That's very good. And then across the way, we've got our enchanting setup, which we made pretty early on so that we could start enchanting our gear as quickly as possible so that we had a little bit more survivability. If we continue down another layer, we've got our brewing station on one area with all of our nether wart and stuff like that. This one's supposed to be a little bit more dreary. And then on the other side of that, we have a smelting area. This is still a manual smelting area, but it works quite quickly at getting things done. We've got like our lava set up so that we don't have to use any coal for fuel. I've used this quite a lot, so this is very helpful. I'm glad that we made this. Now on the yellow layer, we have the bee farm. We've got a ton of bees going on in here right now. And we've got our too tall flower farm. We can come in here and bone meal. We can also come in here and bone meal some of these flowers down here if we ever run out of them. This is the first time I've ever had bees, so this is a pretty exciting thing for me. I went a little overboard with the amount of hives, but that's okay. I'm certainly not going to complain about being able to make more candles or more honey blocks. Next to that, we have our tree and bamboo farm. I've been using this to have a safe place to farm trees indoors so that I don't have to worry about creepers and stuff blowing up on me. I really loved the design of this room. This is a manually made geode. I think that's kind of obvious with how symmetrical it is, but I really liked the way that this came out. I like being in here whenever I'm harvesting trees. It's very nice. And down again we go, where we have the first redstone farm that I've made, which is a wool farm, and we're doing pretty good on that. I'll show you guys how much wool we've got down here. So we're doing pretty good on this. I actually think that I need to add some more shears because I only added one shear to each when we first made it, so they might either be out or close to out. Looks like close to out, so I'm definitely going to need to add some more shears in here so that we can have plenty of any kind of wool that we want. Over here, we have a bunch of mini farms so that we can get things like glowberries, cocoa beans, sweet berries, sea pickles, and of course, snow and snow layers. This was just kind of a tiny little area to get a bunch of these things kind of set up so that I can grab them whenever I want and not have to make a huge room for every single one of these because a lot of these are things that I don't use super often. Down to the next level, we have something that I haven't shown you guys yet, which is this really insanely long tunnel here. Let's go ahead and take a ride. I think I mentioned this quite a few episodes ago, but I found an amethyst node down here, and eventually one day when I wasn't feeling well, I decided to go ahead and make this tunnel a little bit better so that it was easier to get down here, more convenient, not holding shift and wasting food to get down here all the time. This farm is not 100% complete yet, but as you can see, I've cleared it out so that I can get to all of the nodes a little bit better. Looks like I've missed 1 or 2 blocks that I need to clear out, but there's a lot here, and this isn't it. If we come all the way down to the bottom, I've started a little bit of a hallway over here that leads to another geode that I found while I was working on this. I have obviously not done a ton on this, but if I ever need to, oh goodness, it's hard to get through here. If I ever really need to, I can come in here and extend it and expose all the buds in this one as well, so that we can get as many amethysts as we could possibly ever need. This was kind of just a fun side project. I know I need to make probably some water that leads into hoppers and maybe some scaffolding so I can actually reach all of them, because some of them are kind of difficult to get to. But this is a kind of a crazy geode here. I don't think I've ever seen this many buds in one geode. I don't know if that's something that they've changed or if I just got really lucky. This seed in general has just felt incredibly lucky the entire time that I've been here. And now we can make our way on back. Down even further, we've got our last little area that is complete. And I started making this during this episode after we cleared some of the farms upstairs out. So I've got my pumpkin and melons down here. I haven't been around enough for them to fully finish growing. That's okay. I added just kind of some leaves and stuff like that to kind of make the area look a little bit nicer. I think it's kind of cute. I like the little mangrove propagules. But yeah, this is just a tiny little farm to make up for what I took down. And across the way, we've got our cactus farm, which is not incredibly efficient, I'm not going to lie. But basically, most of, or some of, the cactus will fall down and go into the barrel whenever I need it. The only thing this doesn't do is the cactus flowers. I'll still need to set up an area probably to do those manually. Now that we've toured our extensive mine, let's head on outside. So aside from our starter build, one of the first things we did do was we made a dock so that we could do a bunch of fishing. We've got some decent loot in here that I still need to sort out. From here you can see our conduit that we went and got from a guardian temple. I'm very proud of getting that. That's the first time I've ever had a conduit, and that really helped with making the lake all mud so that it looked a lot nicer out here. We've got our nether island over here that leads to our nether portal. This was probably one of my favorite builds that I've done so far in this world. I really like this kind of nether biome that I built here and all of its little details. I know the nether isn't an incredibly popular part of the game, but I just really love the way that this came out. I love the way all of the colors pop over there. Next to our house, we've got our wheat field. Wheat is one of those things that I feel like you just never have enough of when you're playing the game. So I went ahead and I went with this big, huge wheat field because I thought it looked really nice up here. We've got a little bit of a well. And of course, up here we have our stables, which we built very recently. We've got the pond that we made in this episode. In here, we have all of our mounts. We've got one of each of the type of mounts. I know technically the pig is a mount, but because of how kind of janky it is to ride around on, I didn't include it in here, but we do have some pigs over there that we could saddle up if we ever really wanted to. Mostly I'm just proud that we were able to get the Happy Ghast. He was quite the tough one to find. I'm glad that we found him. We can continue from the stables down here where we can see a little bit of our mining operation going on with all of our piles of different kinds of stones and our copper. We've got the tree that we just built and our little picnic blanket. And then further down the way, of course, we have the little home that we built for all the dogs we've found so far. I'm hoping that we can continue to find the rest of them in the future. And their little ruin area is next to our farm ruin areas that we fixed up a little bit. We got griefed by an Enderman. I'm liking the changes that we have made here. I think they make a lot more sense and look a little bit better. These were something that I was never quite sure if I really liked, but now I'm really happy with them. Up here we've got the barn. with all the different types of chickens and pigs and cows living in here. We've got our little loft area up there that we just built, and this cute little kind of lake area that leads back out into our bigger lake. Here's our final little farm over here. Nobody ever really needs that many beetroots, I don't think, so I think this is a good size for it. This is genuinely the most I have ever built in Minecraft. In the past, whenever I have made things, I've just kind of thrown everything in chests and not really cared about the environment that I was basing in or playing in. I've just never really cared that much. Making these videos has kind of given me the opportunity to make something that I care about and that I'm happy to play in. A lot of the things that I've built, like these rock piles, have no purpose whatsoever, but I really enjoy seeing them and seeing these paths and everything that connects together in my world. I'm not necessarily sure if I would be doing that if I wasn't recording this, but I'm really happy that I decided to give it a shot and to make something that I'm proud of and to really try to do something with my Minecraft world for once. The last thing I have to show you guys is that I've extended this path over here. We have this little tiny winding little area that goes all the way through this forest and up towards the swamp over here. And it leads over here to a bridge. I talked about putting a bridge in here quite a few episodes ago, and now it finally is in. We can see out over our lake, and we can kind of see over towards our starter area, and we can see, of course, towards the swamp and where all of the mud work that I did abruptly ends. I'll have to continue that at some point. But on this side is where our next project is going to begin. As you can see, just barely over the hill here, there's a village over there, and I've blocked off some of the villagers into their homes so that they wouldn't get killed while we were away. It has been quite a long time in our world. As you can see, it has been 571 days already. That is a really long time to not be properly geared. Some of my gear isn't too bad, but most of it needs a little bit of help, especially when it comes to my tools. I've long since ran out of an enchanted axe and an enchanted shovel because I've gone through so many of them. I have like a box full of mostly broken tools at home. I've gone through tons of diamonds and everything like that. So I think our next super big project is going to be making an actual village and actually getting properly geared up so that we can make the trip to the end and defeat the Ender Dragon. Before I get started on that, I am going to take a little bit of a break from Minecraft, probably just a few weeks, and then I'll return. I hope you had a lot of fun with this episode, because I sure did. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again. Bye!